Were you alive when the war started? If yes, type "Yes, I was alive" in the comments. Let's see who was there. After this video, watch 2 or 3 more long videos on our channel or on YouTube. You may receive good news in 2 days. If you do, come back and comment, "We receive good news." Like and share this video with your friends. Let's get started. That punishment would follow pleasure. Camp Florence, Arizona. Summer 1945. The brownies sat on a metal tray, dark and shining. Sugar crystals catching the hard light above like tiny diamonds. Greta Hoffman stared at it for a full 30 seconds before she touched it, sure it was a test, sure someone would pull it away. Sure kindness never came without pain. In Germany, she had survived on sawdust bread and turnip soup for 2 years. Now in the American desert, an enemy soldier placed chocolate in front of her. The transport reached Camp Florence on a Tuesday afternoon when the heat climbed to 112 degrees. 43 German women stepped down from the trucks into heat that felt solid and heavy, a slow wave of shimmer and dust that bent the air past 20 feet. They wore the same gray uniforms they had been captured in: Luftwaffe auxiliaries, radio operators, nurses, clerks, women who worked behind the lines, never fired a gun, never faced battle, yet still wore the uniform of a nation now broken and occupied. The camp stretched across the Arizona desert like a makeshift city. Long rows of wooden barracks, painted white to push back the cruel sun. Guard towers stood at the corners, but the soldiers inside looked bored, flipping magazines, smoking cigarettes. Wire fences that felt almost pointless with nothing but miles of empty desert beyond. Tall saguaro cacti stood like silent guards, mountains glowing purple far away. Where could anyone escape to? Greta was 24. She had worked in a communication center in France, translating captured Allied messages until everything fell apart in 44. Taken during the retreat, held in a French camp for 8 months before being sent to America. The stories about America had been clear. German prisoners would be worked, starved, crushed until their will was gone. She prepared herself for that, forced herself to accept it. But the sergeant processing them, a middle-aged man holding a clipboard, his face burned by the sun, spoke slow, blunt English, and never once shouted. "You'll be assigned barracks," he said. "Work starts tomorrow. Kitchen, laundry, grounds. Follow the rules. You'll be treated fair." That was all. Greta caught only 1 word out of 3, but his voice carried something stronger than language. Not anger, not cruelty, just routine, order mixed with something close to kindness. The barracks were cleaner than any place Greta had known in 2 years. Wooden bunks with real mattresses, thin but real sheets and blankets, folded at each bed. Screened windows to keep bugs out. A small stove in the corner for winter, though winter felt unreal in this heat. The 43 women moved through the room in quiet shock, touching walls and beds softly, waiting for someone to say it was wrong. Marguerite Waldstein, 31, former medical officer that first night. Greta felt something that wasn't fear, hunger, or exhaustion. Marguerite claimed the bunk near the door and lowered herself onto it carefully, pressing the mattress as if it might give way. "The thing is," she said in German, "we aren't important. We're not officers. We're just auxiliaries. Why would they spend supplies on us?" Maybe they simply had supplies to spare. Another woman spoke up. Ilse Fischer, 19, communications clerk. "America is rich. Everyone knows that. Rich enough to give prisoners mattresses." Marguerite shook her head. Something was wrong. None of this made sense. But nothing made sense anymore, Greta thought. The war was finished. Germany had fallen. The leaders were gone. The great idea they were raised on had ended in fire, ruins, and millions dead. And now here they were, German women in an American prison camp, sleeping on real beds in the desert. That night, Greta lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Through the window she saw stars, more than she had ever seen, scattered across the sky like light poured from a bucket. There were no blackout rules here. No bombers overhead. Just stars, quiet, and the distant voices of American guards talking softly about baseball, girls back home, and whether breakfast would be good tomorrow. For the first time in years, Greta felt something unfamiliar. She didn't know what to name it. Not hope, exactly, but something close. Maybe the small idea that surviving was still possible. The mess hall was where everything shifted. They were taken there the next morning for breakfast. 43 German women in gray uniforms, guided by 2 guards who walked beside them, not behind, unarmed, joking with each other in English that sounded relaxed, not threatening. The mess hall was huge. Long tables, benches, a serving line run with smooth order by American soldiers and civilian workers. The smell reached Greta first. Coffee. Real coffee, not the bitter grain drink from Germany. Bacon, bread toasting, something sweet she couldn't name. The line moved. Each woman was handed a metal tray. The servers, Americans, not prisoners, filled them until Greta struggled to breathe. 2 eggs fried in butter, yellow and shining, for strips of bacon crisp at the edges. 2 slices of toast with real butter and jam. A glass of milk. A cup of coffee steaming in the heat. Greta stared down. It was more food than she had seen in one meal in 2 years, more strength than she had tasted during the final winter of the war, when everything collapsed, supply lines vanished, and people ate whatever they could find. She had not known hunger like that. She looked up at the server, a young man, maybe 20, sandy hair, open face. He smiled. "Plenty more, where that came from," he said. "You folks need to put some meat on those bones." She didn't grasp the words, but she understood the smile, the heavy servings, the easy abundance that made it clear this wasn't a favor, just routine. She sat with Marguerite, Elsa, and 3 others from their barracks. For a long moment, no one touched the food. They stared, certain it would disappear, certain someone would notice the mistake and take it back. Then Elsa lifted her fork and tasted the egg. Her eyes went wide. "Oh God," she whispered in German. "It's real." Something broke open. 43 women ate with the sharp focus of people who had forgotten what being full felt like. The eggs tasted rich. The bacon was crisp, salty, perfect. The toast was soft inside, crisp outside. The coffee was strong, bitter, and wonderful. Greta ate slowly, trying to stretch each bite, to remember it, because this couldn't last. Tomorrow would bring sawdust bread and turnip soup. This had to be a show, a staged kindness, something for cameras and reports. But deep inside, a small thought formed. What if this was normal? What if Americans truly ate like this every day? What if everything they'd been told about American poverty and struggle was as false as all the rest? After breakfast, work assignments were given. Greta and 15 others were sent to the kitchen, not to cook, that was done by American staff, but to clean, wash dishes, and help with simple prep that didn't need English. The supervisor was Dorothy, around 40, gray in her hair, firm and direct, like Greta's mother. Dorothy showed them the sinks, the racks, how to scrub the huge pots. She spoke slowly, used gestures, repeated steps when Anna, no more than 17, dropped a plate and it shattered. Anna froze, waiting. Dorothy sighed, handed her a broom, pointed to the dustpan. "Accidents happen," she said slowly. "Be careful next time." Anna cleaned with shaking hands, stunned that nothing followed. The work was hot and repetitive, but it was not cruel. The brownie was not just food, it was a message. Washing endless dishes, from camp meals, scrubbing pots, wiping prep tables, the work never stopped. Around 11, Dorothy brought a jug of cold water and glasses. "You girls need to stay hydrated in this heat," she said. "Drink up." Greta drank 3 glasses. The water was cold and clean, better than anything she had tasted in years. In Germany, near the end, water was unsafe and everything had to be boiled to avoid sickness. Here, clean water flowed from taps like something unreal. At noon, Dorothy called for lunch break. The German women looked at each other confused. Lunch, they had eaten breakfast only 3 hours earlier. Surely there could not be more food, but there was. The kitchen staff gave them sandwiches, thick bread with ham, cheese, lettuce, and tomato chips and apple, and a glass of something brown they did not know. Chocolate milk, Dorothy said, seeing their faces. None of them had ever had it. Chocolate had been rare in Germany even before the war, and during the war it vanished, unless you were close to power. Chocolate milk felt almost shocking in its ease. Greta tasted it, carefully sweet, rich, cold, unlike anything she remembered. She drank it slowly, trying to understand how a country at war could give this to enemy prisoners. That afternoon, Dorothy brought out a tray of brownies. "Made these this morning," she said. "Thought you girls might like a treat." They were warm, heavy, and soft, the smell of chocolate filling the room. Dorothy cut them and handed them out. Greta held hers like treasure and took a small bite. The taste spread fast: chocolate, sugar, butter, vanilla, rich, sweet, perfect. She felt tears rise, not from pain, but from the shock of goodness after years of lack. The brownie said, "You are not trash, you are human, you deserve something sweet." Later in her diary, a small notebook Dorothy gave her when Greta asked to write, she tried to explain it. "Today, they gave us brownies. I know how that sounds, like a child excited over candy. But for 2 years, I ate food that was barely food. Bread mixed with sawdust soup from grass and peels. I watched friends grow weak and disappear. I accepted I might follow. And today, an American woman I hardly know gave me a brownie. She baked herself and smiled like it was nothing, like this kindness was normal. Everything we were told was a lie. I don't understand this country. I don't understand their abundance, their easy generosity, or why they would spend chocolate on people they were meant to hate. But I know that one thing. The pattern went on for weeks. Every morning, breakfast that could have fed a German family for days. Eggs, meat, bread, fruit, coffee. Every lunch, sandwiches, or hot meals with portions clearly meant to restore thin, starved bodies. Every dinner, meat, vegetables, and starches served together in ways that showed a food system so full that careful rationing never crossed anyone's mind. And the treats. The treats mattered most. Dorothy baked all the time. Cookies, cakes, pies, brownies. She said sweets kept spirits up, that soldiers and prisoners both needed something good. Greta sensed it was deeper than that. Dorothy had lost a son in the Pacific, they learned later. He died at Guadalcanal in 42. Yet she baked brownies for German prisoners and treated them with patience and warmth. Why? Greta finally asked one day, her English good enough now. "Why you help us?" "We, enemy." Dorothy paused, rolling pie dough, then answered, "Because you're human beings who need help. And because my boy would have wanted it. He believed people should be treated right. Even in war, especially then. Food was not the only shock. Small kindnesses kept adding up, like water wearing down stone. A camp library where prisoners borrowed books and magazines. A recreation yard with nets and sports gear. A chaplain who held services in German. A base doctor who treated an infected tooth with the same care he gave Americans. Guards who learned to say "Guten Morgen" and smiled when the women taught them more words. None of it fit what Greta had been taught. America was meant to be cruel, greedy, focused only on power. Yet everywhere she looked, she saw something else. Not perfection, not paradise, but a belief that even prisoners deserved dignity. Marguerite stayed doubtful. "They're setting us up," she said. "Propaganda, labor, something coming." But as weeks became months, as summer heat softened into fall, as food and kindness never stopped, even Marguerite began to waver. In September, Dorothy planned a birthday for one of the women. Helga Fischer was turning 21. In Germany, her family would have struggled to eat that day. Here, Dorothy baked a cake, a real cake with frosting and candles, and gathered everyone to sing Ice Cream in a prison camp broke the walls she had built to survive. They sang in English, "Happy Birthday to You." The German women didn't know the words and hummed instead. Helga cried, not from sadness, but from being overwhelmed, the tears of someone who expected nothing and received something she didn't know she needed. Dorothy cut the cake and served it with ice cream for the birthday of an enemy prisoner. Greta ate slowly, and something deep inside her, locked away for years, began to loosen. During the war, she had built walls to function, walls that pushed her through hunger, fear, and the slow discovery that everything she believed was false. But those walls also blocked light, trust, and the risky thought that the world might not be entirely cruel. The ice cream melted on her tongue, vanilla, sweet, cold, and the walls cracked again. By October, some women understood enough English to follow conversations. Greta listened as guards and kitchen workers talked about home, missing family, hoping the war with Japan would end so life could feel normal again, about baseball scores, movie stars, and plans after service. Ordinary talk, human talk, the same things German soldiers likely shared. One guard, Corporal Miller, showed photos of his Iowa farm. Endless cornfields, a red barn, cattle grazing, his wife and 2 children smiling. "This is what I'm fighting for," he said. "Just want to go home. That's all any of us want." Greta thought of German soldiers saying the same. Everyone believed they fought for home, for family, for safety from threats real or imagined. Everyone believed what they were told. Everyone suffered. Everyone wanted it to end. The difference was America could feed prisoners chocolate milk and brownies while fighting a war on 2 oceans. That easy surplus spoke louder than propaganda ever could. In November, the war ended fully. Japan surrendered after the terrible weapons were used. Radios in the mess hall announced it, and the camp exploded in celebration. Americans cheered, cried, hugged. The war was over. Truly over. No more dying. No more destruction. Time to go home. The German women watched quietly. They were glad the killing had stopped. But home meant returning to a Germany that no longer existed, a defeated country, occupied, ruined cities, broken economy, and an uncertain future. What going home truly meant was facing what had been done in their name. The crimes of the regime they had served, even if they had never fired a gun. That evening, Dorothy found Greta sitting outside the barracks, watching the desert sunset. The sky burned with orange, purple, and red, stretching endlessly. "You okay?" Dorothy asked. Greta nodded, then shook her head. "I don't know what waits for me in Germany. If my family is alive, if my city still exists, how do you return to a place that is no longer home?" Dorothy sat beside her. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I know you're strong enough to face it. You survived war. You survived capture, transport, prison. You'll survive going home too." "How do you know?" Greta asked. "Because you're still here," Dorothy said. "Still trying. Still thinking. Still searching for meaning. That takes strength." They sat quietly. Then Greta spoke. "Thank you for the brownies. For everything. You didn't have to be kind to us." Dorothy smiled. "Yes, I did. Kindness is always a choice. Even when it's hard. Especially then." The return process began in January 1946. Forms, interviews, clearances. The women were reviewed in groups and approved for return based on records and risk. Most were young women forced into support roles, never decision makers, never criminals. Greta's approval arrived in February. She would sail in March to Bremen. From there, she would search for family and try to rebuild from ruins. The night before departure, Dorothy held a small farewell in the kitchen. Just cookies, coffee, and goodbyes. She gave each woman a small package. Chocolate bars, cookies, a few canned foods for the trip. "Take care of yourselves," Dorothy said. "And remember, the world isn't as simple as propaganda says. People are people everywhere." Greta hugged her without thinking, breaking every rule. Dorothy hugged her back. "I'll never forget the brownies," Greta said. "That sounds silly." "It's not," Dorothy replied. "What did they teach you?" Greta answered, "That kindness is possible, even between enemies, even during war. Someone can choose goodness, and that choice matters more than any lie." The ship back to Germany took 3 long weeks. What she carried home mattered more than the comfort itself. This time the conditions were decent, not luxury, but enough food, clean bunks, medical care when needed. Greta spent much of the voyage on deck when the weather allowed, watching the Atlantic slide beneath the ship, thinking through everything she had seen and learned. In her diary she wrote, "I'm returning to a Germany I don't recognize, trying to build a life from fragments. I'm scared. I'm unsure. But I'm not the same person who left. The Americans gave me something more valuable than food, though the food felt unreal. They gave me proof that humanity survives even when everything else breaks. I saw them feed us when they could have ignored us. I saw them treat our wounds when they could have turned away. I saw Dorothy bake brownies for German prisoners after losing her son to war. These were not political acts. They were human acts. Choices by ordinary people to rise above what circumstances allowed. I don't know what waits for me in Germany, but I know what I'll carry with me. The memory of chocolate milk on a hot afternoon. A brownie still warm from the oven. An American woman who chose kindness over hatred. That memory will matter when life gets hard. It will remind me that better is always possible. Greta reached Bremen in early April. The city was ruins. She had heard about the damage, but seeing it changed everything. Whole neighborhoods crushed to rubble. Families living in basements and makeshift shelters. Food scarce again, tightly rationed by occupation forces. Arizona's abundance felt unreal now, like a dream. She found her mother alive in a refugee camp outside the city. Her father had been killed in an air raid. Her brother was missing, likely dead on the Eastern Front. But her mother and younger sister had survived, and that was more than many could say. Greta found work with the occupation authorities, translating papers, helping bridge communication between German civilians and Allied officials. Her English, once weak, became a daily tool. She watched rebuilding begin, aid flowing in, enemies slowly becoming partners. Years later, when her children asked about the war, she told them not about battles or leaders, but about small human moments. About a woman named Dorothy who lost a son, yet baked brownies for prisoners. About chocolate milk in the desert. About the day she learned propaganda had lied, and that people were more complex and more capable of goodness than any ideology allowed. Your grandmother learned something important, she told them. She learned that kindness is a choice, and choosing kindness, especially toward enemies, is how a broken world is rebuilt, sometimes one brownie at a time. Dorothy kept working at Camp Florence until it closed in 1946. For 3 years she fed soldiers and prisoners, baking thousands of cookies, cakes, and brownies, offering small acts that may have seemed unimportant during war and peace. But Dorothy understood what grand planners often missed, that human connection matters, that treating people with dignity sends ripples no one can measure. After the camp shut down, she returned to Phoenix, kept baking for church gatherings and local events, lived quietly, never spoke much about the war, and died peacefully in 1967 at 73. But the women who worked in her kitchen remembered her. They sent Christmas cards for years. Some even traveled from Germany to Arizona to thank her in person, to introduce their children and grandchildren to the woman who showed them enemies could become human again over something as simple as a brownie. Historians would later record it when studying prisoner experiences. More than 370,000 German prisoners passed through American camps during World War II. Most reported treatment better than Geneva rules required. Enough food, clean housing, medical care, chances for learning and recreation. Some, like the women at Camp Florence, found something more. They found real kindness from people who had every reason to hate them. These were not famous war stories. No battles. No grand hero scenes. Just an American woman baking brownies for German prisoners. Just chocolate milk on a hot afternoon. Just the daily choice to treat people as people, not uniforms or flags. These moments mattered. They mattered to the lives they touched. They mattered for healing and rebuilding. They turned enemies into something else. They proved that even in the darkest times, individuals can choose care over cruelty. They mattered because they were real. Camp Florence, Arizona. Summer 1945. The brownie rests on a metal tray, dark and shining. Greta Hoffman stares at it, sure it is a test. But it is not. It is only a brownie. Chocolate, sugar, butter, made by a woman who chose kindness. Greta takes a bite. Sweet, rich, perfect. In that simple gift, freely given by someone who could have refused, the lies weaken. The walls break a little more. Trust, shared humanity, and a future not ruled by hate begin to feel possible. It is just a brownie, but it is proof that better choices exist. That kindness can be chosen even when it is not required. that the space between enemy and human is smaller than anyone believed. Sometimes the most powerful act is simple care. The brownie is gone in 3 bites, but the memory lasts a lifetime. It is passed to children and grandchildren. It becomes part of the story of how enemies changed, how war ended and peace began, how the world was rebuilt, one small kindness at a time. It began with a brownie and a glass of chocolate milk in the Arizona desert. And it proved that after war, loss, lies, and death, humanity remains. Kindness survives. Hope endures, one brownie at a time.